like to screw you and you like to chop me up. Yeah. I like to screw you and you like to chop me up. Yeah. You're not alone, you're alone. Start off and round in my line. Then we went home to the line. You're talking more, turn me on. If this is too soon, cross the line. Good art design, no love sublime. No boundaries in this heart of mine. Heart of mine. Let's get it. So don't break it. Take it slow. Don't hate me. Love me and know I love you. I love you. This is a copy, no you never taught me. If it ain't no sloppy, I wanna do you and no one can stop me. I like to screw you and you like to chop me. You look like Cupid and baby you shot me. I'm feeling lucid but I am not dreaming. I was so stupid, forever leaving. You got my heart baby, trust and believe me. So don't break it, take it slow. Don't hate me. Peace. What it do, family? It's the Hood Mystic representing www.hoodmystic.com. This is our full moon in Cancer video, all in the purpose of staying consistent, being observant, and dealing with particular correspondence as our ancestors once did, and now we're just continuing the tradition of observing, the celestials. And so, very happy to be here in this present moment, allowing myself to share space and create a sacred space for souls that are interested in educating themselves more. Me just being a simple conduit, nothing special. So just would like to suggest to the family to check in the description of this video the full moon article. I'm actually going to be following along the full moon article with this video, so feel free to follow along with me. Also, a plethora of other links in the descriptions, whether to schedule a reading with me. Very intuitive, very simple. You don't have to email me any longer for readings. If you do email me for readings, I'll simply just give you the link. So if interested in readings, the link is in the description. And everything else that I got going on is in the description. So now that that's out the way, I want to talk about what's about to happen, the time that we're faced with, or not even faced with, but just the time that we are living in. Moving forward, my messages and the things that I'm going to be discussing is going to be extremely spiritual and more on the spiritual tone of conversation. I'm not going to deal with lower energy in the sense of placating it or justifying it or absolving it. I'm going to speak towards what works and what helps and what builds, and I'm not going to speak to the opposite of that. This year has been a beautiful year, and we owe a lot to that, to simply observing and simply corresponding with the energies being present and not ignoring them. And as we progress, I'm not going to ignore the fact of that we're on the precipice of a winter solstice, and what a winter solstice mean combined with the full moon in Cancer. I have a lot to talk about, so if you're just now joining me, you're just now getting into the live, you know, maybe you're just passing through and you got something to do later and you just saying what's up, say peace. But, you know, I plan to be here for an hour just to simply explain this energy point by point and be very clear about what's taking place December 22nd, so there's no confusion. And it serves you to listen to this video and take notes, because I'm going to be speaking on things that are verifiable, and the things that I'm going to be speaking towards is very extremely positive. The problem with speaking positivity into people is that they don't believe it. They don't accept a positive circumstance or a positive outcome. Therefore, their fear takes over, and the reality is I have nothing to do with that. So, moving forward, I'm not going to deal with people's fears or what you're scared of. I'm going to deal with what works and what rescues you or can be a particular salvation to what you're afraid of. And so we're dealing with the astrology in all terms. We're dealing with it on a Vedic sense. We're dealing with it in a Western astrological sense. We're dealing with it on a spiritual sense. We're dealing with it on a psychological sense. And psychological just simply means the study of the soul. And so, without further ado, let's begin our build. That just reminded me of like Bobby Hemmett, where he would have like intros for like an hour and a half, and they'd be so good, the intros be so profound, and then like an hour and a half he'd be like, all right, let's talk about what we came here to talk about. And so I know that's not that extreme, but you know, I shade of Bobby Hemmett, you know, I cannot say that I would be in this space and time without his words. So, you know, just want to spend a special ashe and a special shout out to the Bobby Hemmett family and those who support him or those who know him. And if you've never heard of Bobby Hemmett, you owe it to yourself to do some research. So, what are we here to talk about? We're here to talk about the full moon in Cancer. And the full moon in Cancer is the moon opposed the sun. And like the previous full moons, this full moon is on the cusp of Gemini and Cancer, and the cusp of Capricorn and Sagittarius. Spiritually, this full moon represents inundation, fulfillment, fertility. The winter solstice speaks to an end of a particular year and the beginning of a particular new year. And so astrologically, or let me paraphrase, or let me make it even more plainer, metaphysically, you would want to set the intentions moving into 2019, or you would want to process the events that happen during this weekend as kind of a signifier of how this 2019 will be. The winter solstice is a pivot point in our reality. A lot of us, so the interesting about winter solstice, if you are a child and you received very little during Christmas, there'll come a point in time in your life where as an adult, Christmas becomes one of the most generous, fulfilling times of your life. And then on the flip side, if you had a childhood where you had extravagant Christmases, more than not, when you transcend probably around Saturn return, because Saturn actually rules this time. When you have a Saturn return, it kind of flips and you generally don't get shit for Christmas. Me, on the other hand, my Christmases are very generous as of late. It has really transformed for me to be one of the best times, when growing up this was one of the worst times. It makes me think about that Biggie song, but not a birthday but Christmas, but that part where he says, you know, birthdays was the worst days, now we ship champagne when we thirsty. And that really reminds me, or makes me reflect on Christmas time, or this particular point in time. So if you don't know what a winter solstice is, a winter solstice is the actual point where the sun well, in ancient mythology or ancient thought, is where the sun begins to be still, where it doesn't move and it stays in a particular point of darkness for 3 days. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all up until Christmas, and then it begins to rise. And Christmas is that point where the solstice ends and the sun rises again, and is actually, you know, the birth of Christ or the birth of Jesus or whatever. But it's just talking about the summer solstice process. And if you can find yourself within that story, it's definitely a space and time to be still and receive, or be generous. You could tell, like, in cultures who keep up with the ancient mythologies and things of that nature, ancient traditions, that around this time it's tradition for them to, like, go to Salvation Armies or go to particular places and give to people who are less fortunate. And this is what keeps this their energy going. You know, they invest a lot of energy into simply giving. You know, you wouldn't believe the amount of philanthropy that goes on around this time, where, you know, people buy gifts for their family, but, you know, people also buy gifts for the less fortunate too. You know, there's like uncountable amounts of foundations and different things where people are just in the spirit of giving, because when you align with the energy, it sets you up for the whole year. And we're talking about some of the most prosperous people throughout the whole year, you know what I'm saying? And then you might be the stingy ass person in life that don't think about giving nobody nothing, and you know what I'm saying? And then you deal with this energy as, like, you know, Scrooge, and you know how his story ended, or how his story is. So, you know, you could really utilize this energy for pretty much whatever you want to use it for, but you just have to simply understand it. And so that's what we're going to try to do with this video from an astrological perspective, and hopefully gain some insight. And so the first perspective that we want to speak on is the moon in Cancer at 0 degrees, and the Sabian symbol for this aspect is a fight between social norms and personal excellence. To fully understand, to fully realize, to fully get this aspect is very key, because to be accepted in society by default is saying that you're going to not be your personal best, because society is not set up for you to be your personal best. Society is very hierarchical, is very much based upon slave labor, capitalism, things of that nature, mind control, illusions, false happiness, false beliefs, depression, shall I go on, Western medicine, opioid inundation. You know, society will put you through the ringer for the sake of making a dollar, and what we're left with is, how do we in this post-industrial society figure out our lives? Because the reality is, Make sure y'all see me when I say this. The reality is you can't do what your mama and them did growing up because the world is completely different now. So you have to come up with something completely different and something new, and that's the challenge. That's the opposition. And your personal excellence is required for any life that you plan to live. It don't matter if you want to be a cashier at Walmart. You got to be the best cashier at Walmart because there's other cashiers at Walmart that's wanting to take your job. They want to take your shift. They want to, you know what I'm saying? It don't matter. Like, competition exists at every plane, and you cannot use competition as an excuse to not be your best self. You better use competition as a reason or an actual point of existence that every day is your best day because this is the energy that you put into it. And this is all dealing with the moon. This is all dealing with your subconscious mind. This is all dealing with your 90 percentile of your whole existence. Your subconscious mind is everything, and really controlling it and really programming it at a base level is all you can ever really do in this life. If you think that you're going to accomplish things on a surface level, accomplish things in the illusionary world and find satisfaction, be my guest. But the same way that, you know, a person, you know, there's people on YouTube that will put, and I'm not knocking it, I'm just saying this is a reality. It's people who go viral every day. They sit in their car and they eat hamburgers and, you know, food from different restaurants, and, you know, they say catchy stuff and, you know, get millions of views, make thousands of dollars eating hamburgers. So feel free to go watch one of those videos if that's something that, you know, if you thinking like this illusion is something to be like, to make a lot of money or to get a lot of attention is something to strive for. The point of moon in Cancer at the first degree as it traverses through the astrological sphere of life is to finally, once and for all, take yourself seriously. And to take yourself seriously is making the commitment to personal excellence and not giving yourself excuses to suck. Period. And then realizing that because you made that decision, that people ain't gonna make that decision, and they gonna look at you like you are a bad person. You're a bad person because you want to live the best life that you possibly can, and your family and friends, they might can have the same opportunities as you, but the reality is that they're not going to make those same choices. And since they're not going to make them same choices, they're not going to look at themselves as like, I ain't make them right choices, you know, it's all on me. No, they're going to look at you succeeding and be like, it's all your fault. And I know that's ironic. I know that don't make no sense. All I'm saying is be prepared for it if you are choosing if you're choosing personal excellence as opposed to choosing societal norms, societal acceptance, your mama patting you on the back saying, good job. You know. But even so, we're dealing with a full moon. We're dealing with manifestation. So the reality is people going to be in their darkness. And if you know anything about succeeding or being anything worth anything, you've experienced darkness too. So you got to give them that same space and that same understanding that, hey, out of light comes darkness. So darkness might be something that you need to experience right now. Depression, sadness, etc. might be something that you need to experience right now. But just remember, don't stay in it. And hopefully you could be that beacon to show people like, hey man, I was in a dark space too, and I got out of that dark space, but you know, here goes a helping hand, here goes a gift card, here goes a couple dollars, you know, here goes a good conversation, here goes a trip, you know, like let's do something or whatever the case may be. It's all about being the benefactor moving into this summer solstice. If you are the wounded dog and, you know, woe was me and all of that, it doesn't speak well to this energy. So that's the moon in Cancer. Now we're going to talk about the sun in Capricorn. The sun is actually the astrological point that's in solstice, where the sun first is, I guess, in a space where it's not exalted, where it's in a space of vulnerability. It's not in a strong space, but it would be more to, if we wanted an analogy for explaining the sun and solstice in the beginning stages of Capricorn, would be packing a bag. Like, of course, you ain't on 10 when you trying to get your luggage together and sort out what you need for your trip and things of that nature. You are packing your bag. You prepared. So you're not going to see me when I'm piecing my fit together before I go out. You going to see me when I make my grand arrival. And so more or less, it's like, another analogy is like picking out your outfit, figuring out. But if we want to take that analogy from the mundane and bring it into the spiritual, is really seeing how or what are your spiritual values. And you don't need to be, fucking levitating or shooting sparks out your ass to be spiritual all the time. Sometimes you can just figure out what it is that you are wanting to manifest. Like, what is this 2019 gonna be about? And it's okay to just be in that reflective space, because that darkness or that not knowing is where the magic actually happens. The rise of the invisible world is what we're actually talking about, and the visible world is something that is fading away, and what's coming to the surface is the invisible world. So your cognizance or understanding of that aspect is all that matters, and however long it takes you or whatever you do to prepare for developing your spiritual values is important. But do not believe that you about to make it in 2019 without a spiritual foundation. You will fucking sink in this Cancer energy, because Cancer is a water sign, which means this is an emotional full moon. And to be able to, so the reality of life, if you ever wanted to figure out how to make it in life, is 90% is how you respond to the 10% of everything that's fucking happening. So how you feel about it is all that matters. So people are allowing themselves to feel depressed or sad or whatever the case may be. They have no spiritual foundation. They have no way to cope. And their way to cope might be requiring them to spend money or things of that nature. Maybe they don't have the money to spend. And then dealing with the facts that you can't always cope physically with spiritual problems. That you need a spiritual foundation. You need a spiritual practice. And I cannot give you a spiritual practice. A spiritual practice is something that has to be so personal and so real to you that, I'll tell you to do something and you'll do it, and maybe you fucking break a nail. And it's like, damn, I was listening to the Hood Mystic and I goddamn broke my nails. Gave me some shit, gave me a break my nail spell. Like, fuck all that. You got to develop your own spiritual process, your own spiritual practice, and this is the time. And so if we want to reflect back onto the moon in Cancer, where it's developing a personal excellence, I feel that unifying this opposition, which is this full moon, is knowing that my personal excellence and my spiritual values and my spiritual practice is what sustains me. And I can be in any situation, any environment, and know that it is not the external circumstances that carry me. It is my spiritual practice or my spiritual foundation. And so the dark side of the sun and solstice and the Capricorn energy is also the people who don't have a spiritual practice and they are living off the external world, and the fact that they might not be thriving in this particular area which they want, and they not doing the things to bring about the proper manifestation is like, you know, and maybe they looking at you succeed. All in all, we're dealing with a particular victim narrative that does not serve anyone. And the only thing that creates a victim narrative is the absence of the spiritual power within the individual. There is no way you can be a victim and have a strong spiritual network. It's just impossible. So, moving forward, the next aspect that we're going to be talking about in our final aspect in this video is going to be, but we'll talk about the surrounding aspects to the full moon in Cancer on this channel proceeding with our daily energy reading. So, you know, a lot of people only know me from doing full moon and new moon videos. These videos get the most views, but I will also like to invite people to the daily energy readings where we'll discuss the supporting, whether it be the Saturn, Uranus, Venuses, Mercury supporting this full moon in Cancers. But today we're going to simply be discussing the full moon and its T-square to Mars and Chiron, which Mars is at the 23rd degree and Chiron is at the 27th degree of Pisces. And so a square is an irreconcilability, and so we have to take the energy present in the full moon, which we've discussed previously, but it's a lot of information, so let's try to do a quick review so we don't get too lost and we can kind of stay on the same track. So the moon in Cancer is personal excellence, and that is opposed the sun in Capricorn, which represents developing your spiritual values or developing your spiritual core, and opposition is trying to unify both of them. And if I explained it well, it should be very simple to unify both aspects. And so if we are unified in that, then we can move over to the square. But understand that an opposition and a square to that opposition is extremely messy. So, you know, consider yourself fortunate if you're able to process this information and it makes sense to you and you could apply it to your life, because this is, you're not going to just find all of this information presented like this anywhere else on the planet, like nowhere else. You understand what I'm saying? So for you to be able to understand this energy, it really is going to give you a leg up to around a whole bunch of motherfuckers going absolutely batshit crazy. And the reality too is that in the world of blind, the one-eyed man is king. So to be able to correspond and to recognize and deal with our celestial energies is so very key emotionally, you know, psychologically, because everybody's so deep, right? But then you deal with them on a one-on-one level, and these dudes is like low-key psychotic and low-key like depressed, and you know what happened to all this information. See, the reality is that you can't just simply survive off information. You got to learn how to actually apply this thing. And just because you learned some shit 10 years ago, who's to say that that information is valid in 2018? Nothing, because this world is constantly changing. So to be up on this energy and to see how it actually ties in, because we're 30 minutes into this video, and the reality is that I've just scratched the surface of the message that I have to deliver today. So, you know, it is what it is at this particular point in time. So, moving forward, the full moon at T-square, the full moon T-square in Mars and Chiron, and since these planets are 4 degrees apart, it still classifies as a conjunction, so we're going to treat it as such, even though it's not an exact conjunction. And so Mars speaks to the ability to be able to provide receipts. That's what they say in the hood when a person is saying a bunch of things that maybe they can back up, or but if a person provides receipts or proof or can explain what they're actually saying by verifiable evidence, then that's receipts. And now the dark side of that energy, or the uninitiated viewpoint of that energy, is a person who just simply don't got no receipts and been selling wolf tickets, and a person could have been selling wolf tickets for years. And now you're dealing with, you're dealing with a particular astrological event that don't happen all the time. So when you deal with particular astrological events, you have actual real-time events that correspond with that. That's so surprising, like, oh my God. But the reality is, man, you should be able to see through these people by now, but maybe you don't. And so but this full moon actually speaks to shock and excitement and a strange turn of events, and I feel like it's all rounded up in this T-square, because then you have Chiron that speaks to particular sexual encounters, but it doesn't have to be limited to sexual encounters. It could be business meetings, first dates, promises, or particular rituals that will be answered. And if you were putting things out towards individuals in a negative sense, be prepared to get that backlash as well. All of this energy rings true, and I don't care if you're talking about Jesus or you're talking about Santa Claus. You're going to have to deal with the light side or the dark side of these particular energies, and were you naughty or nice? And we wish it will, and we do sometimes wish it was always that simple, but the reality is that sometimes it is that simple, because it ain't hard to be a good person in 2018, but people do act like it is hard. And so, to summarize this video or the astrology so far, before we deal with the nakshatra, and before we deal with the card of the day, and before we deal with the deity of the week, there are fixed stars associated with this transit. And so I'm going to point out the fixed stars associated with this full moon, and then I'm going to explain, because to simply show it to you would do you no justice. And once again, I do want to reiterate that nobody is talking about this information. So, and it ain't like I want credit for bringing this information. The best thing that you could do is to research this information for yourself and get your own realizations. And if you're able to do that, then I did a good job. If you be like, Hood Mystic is the man because he talking about stuff other people ain't talking about, then that ain't really going to do nothing for me. So we want to look at where the moon is at. And to the right of the moon is the planet Betelgeuse, the largest star on the Orion constellation. And then if we look down, you can see the alignment with the moon with Sirius. And then at a particular point during the full moon, Sirius, the moon, and the sun comes into particular perfect alignment. And so, what does that mean though? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I don't want to seem like that smart or that I'm deep. I'm going to just say it how the ancient Egyptians saw it or viewed these particular stars. So, the fixed star Sirius is actually a feminine goddess Egyptian goddess or Kemetic goddess named Sopdet. And Sopdet is one of the most important stars in the whole Egyptian pantheon of celestial research. And when Sirius was seen in the sky, or Sopdet was seen in the sky, it represents the coming of the new year. And so how ironic that the final full moon of 2018 is actually in alignment with Sirius. And we are going into a new year. So in my mind, as I'm doing my research, it was a particular sentence that really moved me. Because as astronomers, the ancient Egyptians seen the star Sirius, like, wow. And then the Nile would flood. But it would be a pattern and a study to be like, wait a second, maybe these two things are connected. And see, we're not talking about somebody that opened up a liquor store or, you know, sold some weed on the side. We talking about the Egyptian civilization. Us living in America, we can't even fathom being in the Egyptian civilization because America only existed since 1776. That's not even 400 years as a country. The Egyptians last for 10,000 recorded years and Lord knows how many unrecorded years. And so the energy of Sirius, or the understanding of Sopdet, is pre-dynastic, meaning that before there was anything other than a black person, there was the understanding of Sopdet being the most supreme energy on the planet. And I gotta break down Sopdet even further in the video. I just got other stuff to get to before I get to Sopdet. So if you guys don't mind, let's backtrack a little bit and deal with the nakshatra of the week. And trust me, the timing of it and the order of it is divine. So if you really want to get into Sopdet or really have a conversation on Sopdet, just be patient and continue to take notes and continue to build up to the energy, because understanding Sopdet is freeing. And I've been in the consciousness for God, Lord knows how long, and I've never even heard the word Sopdet till I began to study this energy. I've heard of Sirius, I've heard of the dog star, I've heard of Canis Major, I've heard of Sothis even, but never Sopdet as a goddess. So let's fully get into that, but let's deal with the nakshatra of the week, which is Arda. Nakshatras are lunar mansions. These are, if the days is controlled by the sun, then the nights are controlled by the moon. And let's just imagine that the days are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then the moons would be on a completely different system. The nights would be a completely different day if we were to separate them or apply Vedic thought into understanding what a nakshatra is, or it's a lunar mansion. It's how it's divvied up in Vedic astrology. And so the moon is conjunct the nakshatra of Arda, and Arda is represented by the fixed star Betelgeuse. So let's bring up this map one more again to point out where Betelgeuse is in relation to this full moon. So Betelgeuse, if you were to look a little bit down to the left, is right and the moon is actually going to be traversing past, or be almost, well, conjunct Betelgeuse. You could just say simply conjunct Betelgeuse, and it's going to be touching Betelgeuse. So it's just simple to understand what that means. And with nakshatras, there are many different things associated with nakshatras and things of that nature, so I'm just going to bring to light some associations with this nakshatra. First and foremost, the nakshatra represents a teardrop, but not just a simple teardrop. If you dig deep into the etymology, it really represents the dew in the morning dew, and kind of like if you were to look at a leaf, that like drop of moisture, that kind of teardrop. And it could only be established through the night into the morning. You've never seen dew be developed at from 3 p.m. from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. It just can't happen. And I think like the Christian song or the gospel song that it makes me think of is like joy comes in the morning. And no matter where you're at in life, I think that always rings true. Like you could always wake up to a new day. And we could carry on our past indiscretions and things of that nature, but that's the choice that we make. And so invoking or understanding this energy, the deity associated with this in Hindu mythology is Rudra, which is the destructive aspect of Shiva, which is very pertinent to what we were discussing if you want to tie it into the moon in Cancer, and sun in Capricorn, and personal excellence and preparing for living your best life, like Lil Duval would say. And the reality is that you're not about to go back and forth with these niggas. And you need some protection. Like, if you ever thought that you was going to be successful, don't, like, people, security, however rich people going to be, is however much people is going to invest in their security. Period. So sometimes we don't think about security in that sense, though, or sometimes we don't think about, sometimes we carry that energy into, and so that refreshing honey or refreshing morning dew could very well be a tear or sorrow or sadness if we don't realize that each day is actually a new day. And this is an extreme pivot point, so I don't really care what situation you bring it into this full moon. Just know that the situation can change. The title of this video is good news, so everything that I'm saying, you know, to tell people that they're going to have a fortunate or good experience is very hard to believe in this day and age. So I find it very important for me to be able to explain in full detail that you might have a good ass weekend next weekend, so you know, prepare for it, as opposed to thinking that everything is just going to continue to go bad when things are just shifting, things are just changing. And if you can just understand that, if you could just pack your bags and stop worried about the trip, very powerful. But make sure you check out the article. There's some more points in this nakshatra that I just want to say for you reading the article. Okay, so the article will be in the description. Just click the link, full moon and article video. Read it. It's a good study piece throughout the week. Come back to it. And you know, before we deal with soap debt, I'm going to deal with the card of the week, which is very important to really understand. First things first, the Two of Cups, and let's look at the symbology for the Two of Cups. The planet that rules the first decan of Cancer is Venus, and so you see the symbology of Venus and Cancer, right? So if you follow my daily energy readings every Friday, we talk about Venus and we try to explain or elaborate upon what Venus is talking about. And what Venus talks about every Friday, and it's not really hard to really, if you go Friday and then you go freedom, is like very, or Frida, the goddess, or Freya, or Freya, Frida, freedom, Friday, all synonymous. So it's representing freedom. But then you have Cancer, right, which is connecting. And if you were to look at the Rider-Waite version of the Two of Cups, it's two people standing together. They're embraced, but yet and still they're separated. So this is love, where the goddess or the feminine principle loves you so much that it lets you fuck up at will. It lets you make mistakes at will. It lets you do whatever the hell you want to do and produce as much depression, sadness, sickness, disease as your heart can stand. And whenever you decide to turn into it or deal with it, it'll be available to you. It has sustained me throughout this whole YouTube adventure. You know, I never came into this situation knowing that it was going to be like this. It kind of developed into this, and how it developed into this was for sincere, deep appreciation and recognition of the goddess and the divine feminine aspect. And that love is what I give to my wife, or the love that I give to my children. You know, I know people probably think like everything is like roses in my household, and I hope I don't portray that, because you know, my kids really can't stand me, you know, a lot of the times, because you know, they're a lot like me, where people always try to tell me what was good for me or what was best for me. I just didn't care. And so now, as I try to discipline my children, like, you know, you shouldn't do that, they don't be like, oh, my dad is so awesome, he disciplines me, he tries to guide me the right way. They be looking at like, this nigga won't leave me alone. Like, you know what I'm saying? So the reality is not always what you expect it to be. But I always think about this, and I hope this don't sound too crazy, but if my kids decide to hate me one day, they're allowed to, you know, or if they want to live with me till they 50, they're allowed to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not in the space of judging my kids or expecting anything from them. You know, hopefully they live their best life and their greatest life, but my love for them has no bounds, you know, and it has no limitation. And I've created the space for them to hate me for it too. You know what I'm saying? It's never, oh, I'm doing all this for you and you gonna treat me like this. Like, you know, that shit's dead. Yeah, so, you know, when it comes to relationships, I try to be the same way. But really, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to love, when it comes to the Two of Cups, is your love that of a jealousy, possessive, she's mine or he's mine, or I love you because you pay the rent on time type of deal? Or is it a love that you create a space of bliss and happiness for this person, and you have no control or desire to control them? So, and say for instance you deal with a person who steals all of your energy and does not give you energy in return. You got to be responsible to step away from that situation. Because the reality is that people are not going to love you the same way that you love them. They're only going to love you as much as they can in the space and time that they're in. And if they don't love themselves, then they're incapacitated to love you. So the best thing that you can do is give them the space and time for them to love themselves, and don't require them to love you, because it's just impossible for them to do. So therefore, moving into 2019, relationships should be a snap, should be a breeze, should be very simple and easy to understand, because if the shit ain't reciprocating, then you should be in a different situation. Period. And so the deity of the week, I've kind of strayed away from the Orisha of the week, because I think the Orisha of the week was something that we've done all through 2018, and not to say that we're not gonna not talk about Orishas and things of that nature moving forward, but we're just gonna allow spirit to manifest in different pantheons and different ways of thought, and not limit ourselves to any one way of thinking. And today I'm pulling from the ancient Egyptians, because I was led here to get to this space, to have this conversation. Wasn't triggered by me being in, like, you know, scrolling through the internet trying to figure out something to talk about. This came from meditation and being seen this, and then doing the research from the dream and my wife's dream about Egypt. So we just started, I just started studying Egyptian astronomy, and I came across Sopdet, which is Sirius. You may know her as Isis, but she's not Isis, she's Sopdet. And throughout time and throughout history, a lot of pre-dynastic and ancient energies have been absorbed into mainstream thought, and the pre-dynastic energy has been lost to the conscious mind. And it takes the independent researcher, it takes the individual to go outside of mainstream media or mainstream thought, philosophy, etc., and find something that hasn't been drained and oversaturated or inundated with BS. And then, like, from there, dealing with Sopdet and dealing with Sirius, where Sirius is supposed to be the precursor to all life, the foundation to spiritual life, the center point to Atlantis. The sun is just something that shines throughout the illusionary world. We get to see, you know, buildings, people do the stanky leg, go to the bank, withdraw some money. That's because of the sun. But the feeling that we have when we're comfortable around another soul, the feeling of, you know, making love to your partner, or to, like, pick up my children and watch them develop and kiss them or hold them, you know, or them telling me bye when I go off to work. Like, Sopdet provides that energy, not the sun. See, that energy can be felt. The energy that can be seen might produce the illusion of feeling, but if I don't see it any longer, then I'm either be hurt because I don't see it, or I just won't have no feeling, or I'm gonna have a memory of it. So I say all of this to say, it's people out here with millions of views of them eating hamburgers. That's all relative to the sun worship that's being taken place of the illusionary world being supreme. And so the idea of the spiritual world might not be the predominant thought of millions of people. But moving into this full moon in Cancer energy, we are going to see a shift of souls being converted from an illusionary paradigm to a spiritual paradigm, and I hope that you prepared. And it don't have anything to do with me. It just has everything to do with the moon being in alignment for a full moon, which is an astrological event. And this alignment with Canis Major conjunct Betelgeuse, activating the twins, Gemini, Castor, and Pollux. The sun at the cusp of Sagittarius and Capricorn, getting ready to do his thing, getting ready to ascend. And then we want to talk about whether or not we want to deal with soap debt on a spiritual level. But my thing is, if you decide to deal with soap debt on a spiritual level, then what comes of that? She is the goddess of inundation. So if you want to have a particular windfall of finances, of happiness, of bliss, of love, or, you know, prosperity, you name it, you want to deal with this energy, you know. And moving forward, I'm going to talk about other energies that you can deal with. But right now, like, I ain't never even heard of soap debt. But from studying her and the feelings that I've had, you know, studying this information, my whole pineal gland, I just was vibrating. Like, physically vibrating, like, just supercharged with energy. Like, and this is something that I physically felt. So, you know, how to spell it is in the article. But like I said previously, do your own research, do your own information, get your own situation together, because maybe soap debt ain't for you. But man, I'm telling you, the energy of Sirius and Sirius A and Sirius B is definitely coming online, and the things that I've been talking about and building to on these daily energy readings, you know, those will continue tomorrow. But like I said, this video is going to last about an hour, and we are approaching the 57-minute mark. And so what I would like to do now is just extend my gratitude for those who join me on the live and those who are watch this video post live for allowing me the space and time to explain everything that I needed to explain, and, you know, people being supportive of it. You understand? You know, none of this is easy, none of this is difficult, all of this requires sacrifice, and all of this requires gratitude. And so at this point in time, that is the energy that I'm exuding to the family. And just to let you know that, you know, wherever you find yourself, wherever you are, you know, if you need a quick fix, if you need to get out of a jam real quick, just be grateful that you're in this position to make a change, and, you know, things will work out real smooth. You know, to be grateful is our superpower moving into 2019. Understanding energy exchange is our superpower moving into 2019. Like with this clothing endeavor that I've done, you know, where a person might look at it like, you know, you might look at this design or whatever, like, that's a cool shirt, or, you know, I like that shirt, or whatever the case may be. But, you know, people is actually manifesting money, me included. Like, I'm not only a client, I am the Colombian Exchange president. Like, you got to understand that these symbols and this collection of symbols is a way to manifest money very easily, very simply. All you got to do is, you know, buy an $18 shirt, you know what I'm saying, and understand. You wouldn't believe the messages that I get in response to, you know, people purchasing this gear. And, you know, the links to this site is, you know, it's Christmas time and things of that nature. And, you know, y'all be spending y'all money on stupid shit for real. So, you know, I would just say, if you got $20 to spend on a Christmas gift, a cash shirt would be a smart ass investment. You know what I'm saying? Moving into 2019, because it's way more than a shirt. It's really an investment, and it's not just, you know, a purchase. It's actually a spell. It's actually a way to program your subconscious to really manifest money. And, you know, everything that I'm talking about could be founded, could be found at columbianexchange.com. The link's in the description. My website, everything that you need to know about me is found in the descriptions. So as we're approaching an hour exactly, I'm going to end this video now and encourage everybody to come back to this video, because I talked about a lot of information, and just, you know, reabsorb it, reprocess it, look over your notes, read the article, and, you know, understand that good things are coming. When you deal with your spirit, they have no choice not to. You know, when you don't deal with your spirit or your soul, then, you know, it's a free-for-all out here, man. So be careful. Peace and blessings from my family to yours. I'll see you guys on Monday. Peace.